Welcome viewer, I am your teacher, Agnes Nindi. In this lesson, we will be separating our patterns from the main block, which is this. We separate the patterns and then we move on to lay the patterns and cut the fabric, ready for stitching. Let's work, let's learn together. Now, once we've indicated our seam allowances, it is important to realize that in this making of patterns, we will be using two kinds of shears. This is a fabric shear, and this is a paper cutting scissors. This paper cutting scissor cannot be used on cutting fabric. The reason being, it is blunt. It will be blunt with time as I cut paper. So if I cut paper using my shears, fabric shears, eventually they will be blunt. So it is important to have two different types of shears. I am using my paper cutting scissor to separate my patterns. Quickly, I will cut along the seam allowance. I'm cutting along the center front line. Along the waistline. And remember to indicate that notch to show where the dart lies. This is my side seam. Here. I've got my pattern. I've got my complete front pattern. I've got my complete back pattern. So, as we continue learning, you realize that we progressed from the working patterns to the final patterns. These working patterns didn't have any seam allowance. They didn't have any information. But in this final pattern, it has a hip line, it shows the skirt, the front skirt, it shows the cut number, and it has a grain line. It is also showing the front placed on fold. This mark represents fold. The back, it is showing that it has a seam along the side and at the center back. So we move on to put our patterns on fabric. It is important to clear your working table so that you are cutting your fabric from a smooth, flat table. So I will clear and then move on to cutting our patterns. It is important. This is my fabric. And with the fabric, it is important to note the selvages of the fabric. The selvage, we also learn to know where is the grain line. You unroll your fabric until you find that you are comfortable and the fabric that you need has been achieved. So, this is my fabric, and the fabric has different grains. From this part, it is important to note that there is a closely woven fabric. This is the selvage. It is the selvage which runs parallel to the straight grain. So when you cut along this grain, this is a straight grain. And any yarn running across, it is on the weft. So this is the straight grain, and this is on the weft grain. So for us, because our patterns clearly tell us that we are cutting on a straight grain, there is no way we will place our patterns on the cross like this, but we'll have to follow the straight grain of our fabric. For this, I need to establish where the fabric, the meterage, the amount of fabric I need to use for this specific skirt. And for me to establish that, I will get the final length of my skirt from the pattern so that we don't misuse fabric. So I will measure the pattern, and I will realize that my pattern, the skirt we were doing was 26 inches. The length was 26 inches. So I'll have to cut 26 inches finished length plus 1 inch the seam allowance. So my length should be 27. So I will measure 27 from this fabric. I'll measure 27 inches. I'll have to mark that. Along the straight grain, mark again 27 inches. And then using my meter rule, I will join this fabric with a line, where there's 27 inches line, I join it. And using my fabric shears, I will separate this fabric from the other main fabric. It is important for security to make sure that you are using your right, not unless you are left-handed, and then your left hand will be used to support the lay. This is the spread, the fabric. You support it so that it doesn't raise as you cut. You support your lay with your right hand. Cut with long strokes so that you maintain a smooth cut. The excess fabric, you don't need it for now. You roll it nicely for use in the previous stitching. In the other stitches that will be coming, and other stitches, you can get some stitching in the future, so you need to put it aside, and now you deal with your fabric, that which you've already identified for use. Using my back skirt, it is telling me to cut 2 pieces. And my front, it is indicating that I place my fabric on fold. So if I was to place it on fold, it means I'll have to fold this fabric. And I have to fold it along the straight grain. You lay your pattern, making sure that all points are met. The fabric is on fold, and therefore I will place my fold line along the folded fabric. Remember, we are eliminating the selvage, so I will not cut any pattern along the selvage. Before I cut, it is important to transfer the pattern marks. And in this case, I need to transfer my darts. So this has to be transferred. My darts has to be transferred. Once again, I have to mark the length of the dart so that this can also be transferred to the skirt. I have to mark my hip line, very important, and then I can trace my skirts out. So that has already been transferred, And with this, I can pick a ruler. Since the dart has already been marked, I will only pick a ruler and join my dart to the other dart. Join my dart. And then using my pair of shears, I will now separate this pattern. It is important to mark the dart even on the other side of the skirt so that this can also be transferred. So this is my skirt, complete skirt. After being placed on fold, I will place the darts, mark them. Now this skirt, we have been able to develop a piece, a pattern, cut the skirt, ready for stitchery. Viewer, this has been our lesson, how to develop patterns, installing the seam allowances, the pattern instruction, transferring the pattern instruction to the piece of cloth, and this is our skirt, the front part of the skirt, without a seam at the center. And this still remains our center line. If I was to fold it, it is only one part of the skirt which we developed, but after following the instructions, now we've been in a position to achieve two parts of the skirt. That is the front part. It is important you keep it well as you progress to cutting your back skirt. You keep your pattern safe for future use. So my remaining fabric, I still also identify the back, the selvage of my fabric. Along the selvage, I will place now my back patterns. And as they say, we are saying that this pattern is cut too. So I have to place it on a straight grain, as per the grain, as per the instructions. I follow the same procedure. I mark, copy, indicate all the notches. Show the notches along the waistline for the darts. Once you are there, it's important also to mark the length of your dart. These two darts, you have to mark the length. Pick, transfer the information. It has to be clearly showing so that you are sure that your darts are not misplaced. Neither are they off grain. They should be on a straight line so that your skirt hangs well. Viewer, this is skirt, and then I will be in a position to separate the pattern for this back. Supporting your spread or your lay with your left hand, you cut with continuous long strokes so that you will be in a position to minimize fraying of the fabric. You mark the hip line. So this is part of the back skirt. As you can see, it is not on fold, it is single piece, so I need another part. This is for the left, so I need another part for the back, the right part for the back. And it is a complete pattern ready for stitching. Viewers, in this lesson, we've learned on how to transfer the pattern marks from the basic patterns to the final pattern. This is a working pattern, this is the final pattern. Then from the final pattern to the fabric. We've been able to develop the patterns, to cut out the pattern pieces, ready for stitching. Thank you so much for watching, and next lesson we will continue and catch up from there. Thank you.